Hey everyone, Matt Pisarcik from RazorEmporium. Every day we get questions from customers and from razor enthusiasts, shavers like yourself out there asking, is my razor broken? And I decided to make a YouTube video to kind of help address some of the most common questions that we could answer. So a lot of the razors out there are this old style 1910s, 1920s ball end old type. Now this razor handle itself has a hairline crack, as you can see right here. Now a lot of people ask, is this broken? Well, the short answer is yes, of course it is, it's cracked. Finding them without the crack is actually quite hard. There's not a lot of them. Almost every one I've ever come across is cracked, and the reason for that, I theorized and other collectors have theorized, is the fact that there may have been inferior metals being used around the war time when these came out, and because they are made of brass, maybe brass was being used for making shells and other things in the armory, and so the metal itself was cracking even back in the day. There are historical records of Gillette receiving these handles back for replacement because of cracking happening. I think that one of the easiest ways they were cracking was because it is a hollow handle and people were cranking them down on top of the razor head, and the old blades were actually much more springy and much thicker and needed a lot more tension on them. I think that's why they cracked. You see an improvement to that later in the 30s where it's a solid handle and not this hollow handle. If it does crack like this, it does detract from value, but it's still functional. You can still shave with it. And these old handles like this, if the ball comes out or the neck comes out, you can actually just glue that right back in and continue using it. So I would say that it's an historical crack, but it's not broken. I think you could still use it. So that kind of answers that question. Another really common thing that happens, we all have used a Gillette twist to open razor at one point or another. This is the most common razor, the most popular, called the Gillette $1.95 adjustable, also known as the Gillette Fat Boy adjustable that today's shavers have nicknamed it. You see that all the twist to open razors that came out featured this little band right here, close to the twist to open knob at the bottom. That band is not aesthetic at all. It's completely functional, and the purpose of that band is to hold this lower twist to open knob inside of the handle so it can rotate and open the doors. Well, over time, what can happen if these razors are dropped or if they're abused, maybe cranked too tight, whatever can happen, you can actually find them where it'll completely come out like this, and now your razor functions almost like a toggle adjustable where it flicks open. That was actually the idea of the toggle, to be a quick opening mechanism, as Gillette called it. But you don't want that to happen on your twist to open unless it is a toggle. So is this broken? It is damaged. It's not functional as the way it's supposed to be. Is this repairable? Absolutely. We actually have a tool here at RazorEmporium that safely recrimps that press fitting, as this is called, a press fit. And that tool will re-press in this metal without damaging the knurling that you see on the handle. The knurling is just this pattern that's on the handle. So we can repair that here. That's a common thing we fix all the time, is the press fitting that's come off. Another common issue on these adjustables has to do with the T-bar. So a lot of people, I use different terminology. The T-bar is inside where the center rod or the push rod that attaches to your lower handle attaches to the center T-bar and allows the razor doors to be carried up and down and open and close. Well, there are two small rivets inside of that T-bar that connect to the push rod, and those two rivets can come loose or come completely off. You'll notice on the early 1934 style Aristocrat, 36 style Aristocrat, there's only one rivet, and that leads to an action that's similar to this, where it rotates left and right. And that's because the rivets come loose and there's only one of them. Almost all of them open crookedly. In fact, when the doors, you start opening them, you'll notice that a lot of these doors that are damaged, they'll open crooked or cockeyed. Is it broken? It's not functional anymore in terms of the way it's supposed to be made. But is it really broken? No. Of course, if it opens cockeyed, we could try to repeen that and rehammer that rivet a little bit. They're really hard to replace. This was a customer's razor who ordered it, and the lower rivet was completely gone, and we were able to put a small kind of makeshift rivet up inside of this T-bar and reconnect the push rod. So it does rotate, but it is still functional in the sense that he can clamp it down nice and tight, and he can shave with this now. So this rhodium revamped Fat Boy is functional. It is not to its manufacturer spec, but it still can be used. That's a really common thing. If you do see those doors opening cockeyed, that's the reason, is because that little rivet has come loose or come completely off. Another really common issue with the twist open razors has to do with the inside. Let me grab another rhodium razor here to show you the inside of one that is working properly. Now this one's not damaged. I didn't have any in the shop right now that suffer from this next problem. The next problem is called the swage. Now the swage is this small area, I don't have any pointing devices, but this small area right here, this little ring that you see around the push rod, that little ring is actually a manufacturing technique. It's called swaging. Swaging just means that the handle is connected to the head with that single connection. That's all the connection is between the handle and the head. If that little ring comes loose, for any reason, it's been dropped, it's eroded away, there's been rusting, there's been corrosion. I've seen that come completely off. I've seen it become loose. And if there's enough material left there, we do have some tools here that can retighten that swage, but nothing is going to be the same as the original manufacturing swage. I don't have the same tools that Gillette did. When Gillette manufactured this razor, it'd be stood up in a very large, heavy ton machine would come down and kind of stamp that and mushroom out the handle material onto the head material to kind of secure that down. I don't have those same heavy hydraulic machines with the same templates as Gillette, but I do have some tools here that we've been able to re-swage that and retighten that. And you'll notice if the telltale sign that your swage is loose is if the head itself, the entire head, not just the doors like we just talked about, but if the entire head can move left or right, that means the swage is loose, and that may need to be adjusted. Now this is something we can do with our tune-up service here, but that is the ailment that I wanted to tell you about there. So that's a swaging issue. Another issue that I get about adjustable razors while I have this Fat Boy in my hands has to do with adjusting. Now if you look back at the original instructions for Gillette, they instructed you to adjust the razor's mechanism, the dial here, with the doors at least cracked. You don't need to fully open them, but at least crack them open. And that's because the mechanism of adjusting has to do with this tray. So a common question we get is my razor adjusting? Well, the first thing you can look at is this lower tray. Does this lower tray easily move up and down? It should be that easy. Simply gravity alone should be all that's keeping this tray down. This is the actual tray that's doing the adjustment. You notice the inside of the razor has these 4 little prongs, and those prongs would push the razor blade up or elevate it. I think Gillette may have referred to it as a tray riser. And so if I put a blade in here, you notice that simply just pushing up on this when it's open doesn't do anything. So you may say, well, it's not doing anything. Well, the mechanism only works when the doors are closed. So hence, you need to adjust your razor with the doors at least open to allow that the twist open mechanism to move the razor blade up or down. Let's say we want to move to position number 7 on this razor. And then as you come down, now the force of the doors push down on that riser tray and secure the blade in place, and you now have the correct blade exposure to get the different shave. So if your razor's not adjusting, simply look to see if this tray moves up and down. So if I move to 9, it should be a little more exposure, a little bit more gap now between the blade and the safety bar. And of course if I loosen and move down to position 1, it should be at its lowest where it's almost touching the safety bar completely. And the riser tray is not really being used at all. So that is a really common issue. If your razor's not adjusting, take your blade out and look to see if this tray is movable, and it should be able to move with just your hands like that. And if it's not, a real common thing that you can do is to maybe put some mineral oil up in there and see if you can wiggle it and get it to loosen up. You can also use CLR, calcium, lime, and rust removal. A lot of times it's just a simple issue of there's some buildup inside, and by using something to help dissolve some of that buildup, this tray will be able to move again. And as long as this can push it up, which is all it's doing, the dial is just pushing that riser straight up, your razor should be adjusting. And you can check it with your fingers. If you put your finger inside here and feel, you could feel at the highest position, position number 9, the forks of the riser tray are completely in their up position, and if I go down to 1, they're flat and flush with the rest of the razor head, and thus there's no adjustment happening, there's no gap being added. So that's an easy way to see if your adjustment's working. And always make sure to adjust your razor with the doors at least cracked open a little bit, so you're not working against the mechanism of the doors being pulled down against that. You can't do anything if one thing's pushing up and one thing's pulling down. Last but not least, a common issue, this razor actually just came to us today for repair. This is a customer's razor here. This is a 1970s super adjustable long handle razor, also referred to as a Super 109. This razor, you notice here, the clicker dial is actually completely missing. So it came in broken, and I extracted that broken clicker dial out of there, and that little clicker is no longer in place. Does the razor still function? Absolutely it does. Does it need to click? No. The clicking has nothing to do with adjustment. The clicking is just an audible recognition that it is moving and kind of locks the dial in place. So now, as you notice, as opposed to our functional fat boy over here, where we have a nice audible click all the way up and down, and it locks in place on the numbers, this razor adjustment band just spins freely. It's kind of a blessing in disguise. You're actually going to be able to dial in more than just 1 through 9 settings. You can now do 1.5, 2.5, whatever. And it still is completely functional. This riser tray, as we just talked about, is functionally perfect. It's still moving up and down freely, and this dial can push it up into these positions. Now it's not clicking in place, it's not locking. So when you lock down the doors on this razor, especially with the blade in there, you'll notice that it'll stay right in place just fine, and it is actually functioning. So again, is it broke? Yes. There's a piece missing that Gillette put in there, and it's not there anymore. Is it functional? Yes, it still is functional, however. And if we are provided with a clicker by this customer, or if I could scrounge one up for my parts bin, we can put that clicker back down in there and see if we can get it to function again to manufacturer spec. But it's still perfectly functional to shave with and shaveable. So I think that answers most of the questions. I write so many of these emails, and my staff write so many of these emails about some of these common issues. We just wanted to make a brief video demonstrating and showing you some of these common ailments with some of the Gillette and other vintage razors, and help answer some of those questions. Always remember, before trying anything, a nice warm to even hot bath of water and soap, dish detergent, fixes almost every problem, honestly. And you only really have to bring out the big guns and send something in to us if there is some serious mechanical issue that requires a special tool or special process that we know how to do here. But these razors are very durable. They were made very, very well, and most of the problems can be solved with some simple techniques. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this has been an informative video, and stay tuned to our YouTube channel for more education and more shaving related topics. Have a great one.